Hi, my name is Hannah McKelma and I am a special education major at Dakota State. I will be going over the process and services for special education and the different services that schools should provide. The first thing we'll be talking about is early learning for students with disabilities. This covers the advantages of early childhood education. All children with disabilities should have access to inclusive, high-quality early childhood programs, which is totally true. Some of the different advantages are an increase in vocabulary development and cognitive abilities. The students in these early childhood programs are surrounded by other students and teachers who increase their vocabulary by having conversations with them, going over different words and terms in the classroom. Another advantage is behavioral and social improvements. They see how students should act in a classroom. They also see how other students act. And the last one there is the economic benefits for the community. If you go to this website, you'll see that it talks about the different resources that they have here. It talks about the policies for the early childhood programs and the recommendations that they have. You can look through that. The next thing is these are the different legislative measures that are taken for special education today. The first one being education for all handicapped children, which happened in 1975. This was the very first special education law to help students with physical or mental disabilities. It makes special services available to them, and it makes sure that schools and teachers are maintaining fair and appropriate services for these students. Number two is Individuals with Disability Education Act, which happened in 1990. This is actually just a revision of the first one you'll see there, which means that the needs that students receive appropriate at the least restrictive environment, which means they're involved in the classroom as much as possible. The third one is the No Child Left Behind Act in 2001, which called for all the schools to be accountable for these students, whether they had a disability or not, and to provide them with the education. Number four is something you'll hear quite often called an individualized education program. This is also referred to as an IEP, which is when parents and teachers create a plan or evaluation on your child's current academic status, and it talks about different goals and objectives that they can have and where the student is going to be best suited in the classroom or out of the classroom. It talks about their setting, the placement, and once your child reaches age 16, they go through transitional services with you. The last one is students with disability and post-secondary schools. This your child is not required to go to a post-secondary school, and it's not required to be free, but they do provide public education for these students. It just depends on different colleges. For the post-secondary, they don't offer the free education, like I said, but they will offer different accommodations for students with disabilities once they reach that post-secondary education. Categories of disabilities, if you watch this video, it'll go through.
Hello and welcome to Teachings in Education,
the
14 categories of students with disabilities, for classroom educators, teachers, and others. In this video, all 14 categories average general intelligence.
So the first one is this intellectual disability that you'll hear about.
Existing with deficits in adaptive behavior. Children with this disability have an IQ below 70. Next up, this refers to a child with
deaf and blindness is the next one that they'll talk about. Both hearing or visual disabilities. Specific learning disability is one that you'll see a lot in schools.
Psychological processes and the imperfect ability to think, speak, read, write, and do math. Students have.
So you can go through that and it'll show you the 14 different categories that a child could be listed under. I'll let you watch that on your own time. The next slide is going to talk about your rights as a parent. In South Dakota, we offer this book right here called the South Dakota Parental Rights and Procedural Safeguards. The teachers in your school are required to give you a copy of this every time you have a meeting if you don't already have one. So the parental rights amendment that was put in place goes through these 5 different steps. It just talks about different rights that you have as a parent, as opposed to if you wanted to take your child to public education, private education, homeschools, whatever you have, the rights are all the same. The United States should not infringe on your rights, and you should not be denied of these rights. If you want more information about the South Dakota rights, I have included a link here that will take you to the Parental Rights and Procedural Safeguards PDF file. So you can scroll through that. The next part I'm going to spend a little bit more time on. It talks about the assessment process of a child who is thought to have a disability. The first thing that is done is the identification of high-risk needs. So this could be performed by a teacher, or even a parent could sometimes feel like their child needs to be assessed. So this is talking about any child who is experiencing those social, academic, or medical, or maybe even language needs. They're performing higher, or they're performing lower than those of their peers or of students in their grade level. The next one would be the referral to the child's study team. This is when the teachers will attempt to try different strategies in the classroom. Usually there will be a committee that's formed in your school that will talk about different strategies that the teachers can use for your child. The next one, the teachers would have to obtain parental informed consent to do the assessments. When the initial evaluation is suspected or requested, then these papers would be sent home for the parent to agree and sign, yes, you may go ahead and do those assessments on my child. The next one is understanding the requirements of an evaluation for a suspected disability. So whether the child has a disability, this takes into consideration their present level of academic achievement and their functional performance. And if they are eligible, the related service, then for the services, then these will go on to hold an IEP meeting with you and your child. The next one would be under the multidisciplinary team and the comprehensive assessment. This is used to gather the functional, academic, and development information. This is where you will receive paperwork that you need to assess your child at home, their behaviors, their different things that happen that go on home, and how your child reacts to them. And if your child is seen to have elevated scores across the board, like at school, at home, and in another classroom, then that's when the teachers start to assess for different disabilities. The next one would be understanding the various methods of assessment options that are available to the multidisciplinary team. This would be just in place to make sure that the student is provided with the most comprehensive assessment, meaning that the highest professionals are giving them, that's done with the right tests, and it's not just your child sitting in a room all day playing with blocks. The next one would be your basic statistic and scoring terminology used in the assessment. This is how a psychologist will come in and explain your child's scores to you. They'll report if they think your child does have a suspected disability or not. And the eighth step would be the student's behavior during the assessment process. This just observes the student and how they react, their different learning styles, their areas of struggle, if they have low or high self-esteem, if they get frustrated easily, different tasks that worked and didn't work when the child was being assessed. Part 9 would be to understand the components of the professional report. So this would just be the teachers and professionals and school psychologists summarizing all their findings and telling you what they think your next step should be. 10 would be understanding what is required for the presentation of the IEP committee. So this is determine whether or not the student actually does have a documented disability. The IEP team will also go over what kind of setting would be best for your child and the different curriculum needs that would be in your next step for the child. 11 would be understanding CBM. This is a method that teachers use to find out how the student is progressing. So they do one in math, reading, writing, and I believe spelling. It goes through when the child is assessed, they'll take those scores and see how they are progressing. The next one would be assessment and accommodations. This would be if a child needs different things to help them be successful in class, such as the teacher reading a book for them, the teacher writing the essay when the child says the words. There are also accommodations for testing, such as going through the items with them or crossing off two of the multiplication or multiple choice options. The next one would be the Common Core Standards, which this is basically just the United States is ensuring that students are in every state and every school receiving the same type of education. The next one would be accommodations and assessments. This is when IDEA permits children with a disability to participate in these programs of accommodations. The last one would be special education acronyms, which your IEP team will go over with you. Services that may be provided to you. This is a video on YouTube that really is short and helps you understand the different services such as physical therapy, occupational therapy. You can watch through that. Occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy. Speech therapy, yep. So you can go through and watch that. See if I can get this to load. And that's all I have for you. If you have any other questions, you can go on to the DOE Department of Education website, and there are lots of links that can help you. You can also talk to your school psychologist or special education teacher to receive more information.